Today's episode, we are going to talk about being spiteful in our marriage. And one of my takeaways was that we need to recognize when that is so that we don't have many instances of being petty or spiteful, that it grows into this giant issue within our marriage.
Yeah, my takeaway was the thoughtfulness or considering the thoughtfulness of our wives when they do things, even when they may seem spiteful, are probably backed by very good reasons. Now, to get the full explanation of what we're talking about here, keep listening. So, I feel like this episode is going to be a bit of a coaching session for me. It's something that I've been mindful of for a while and I've been working on. But I feel like talking to you about this might also give me a little more insight into it and help me make some additional changes that may or may not be needed. So the topic I wanted to bring up was spite or is spite, right? For me, I would say this is probably something I learned growing up in my family the way I did. Uh, if I had to put some sort of cause to it,
Mhm.
comes rather naturally to me to spite my wife, right? And I understand that I shouldn't be doing that because I love her, right? And even if it's something along the lines of, how do I explain this? Like me being upset about something and my mind tells me, well, this is warranted. You should spite her for this, right? Um, I've made a commitment to love her unconditionally, and spite shouldn't be on the table. So, I guess my question is when I get to this space where I realize my my young brain is like, hey, here's a nice spot to throw some spite. Where should my mind be refocused to?
Gotcha. Before I answer, I'm going to ask you this. Can you give a definition of what is spite to you? Well, I'll just say this. The definition of spite, one of them is like petty ill will.
Mhm.
But what do you what do you consider spite? And then I can answer that question a little better.
I mean, I don't know that I can add anything else to that definition. That is basically what I'm talking about because it's always
Yeah.
petty. Um, yeah, I mean, and it's funny because I don't necessarily in the moment, and maybe this is why I've struggled with it. I don't think about it necessarily as ill will,
Mhm.
right? So on the back end, while I know as either small or big as it might become, I really only consider the petty part of it, not so much the ill will. So with that being said, I think maybe if I think more that the definition revolves around ill will as well, that might kind of pull me out of that area. Like that's not something I want to do and or should be doing, right? Which we already know. Um, but yeah, I mean, I think it's mostly just petty for me.
Yeah, the Merriam-Webster says exactly petty ill will or hatred with the disposition to irritate, annoy, or thwart. So it's really like it's petty. It comes out of a not great place, and it's either going to annoy, or irritate or something. So there's there's a weightiness to it, but there's not, right? See, if you don't think about it, it's just something that you do and you're like, I should really something real petty, right? Um, but a way to, I guess, stop that or help you recalibrate is like you just said, like, okay, it's not real. I don't really want to have ill will toward my wife. I'm just being petty right now.
Right.
But also something that we always preach on this podcast is just to always try to remember that your wife has your best interest in heart. Now, if you're both out here being petty, then like there's definitely evidence of that, and that might be something you can talk about. But generally speaking, um, I know your wife is not going to just come off to do something just because she wants you to feel some type of way.
Yeah. And I'm trying to come up with an example um, of my propensity to be petty, right? And also, with the work that I've done, my recognition of said pettiness
Mhm,
and my progression from that. And I think I've recently brought it up on the pod, but there's an example where, all right, so this is going to go back to me and my piles.
mhm.
Piles of stuff I just put places. And in my mind, it's organized chaos, right?
Right.
So I know where everything is until it gets moved by my wife. Um, so I come home one day, and this is for anyone who hasn't heard the story before. She had moved some things to my little office area, which is, basically just a desk in a corner. And, that's really all the space I need. But, she moves it there for whatever reason. It could be that like I left something on the dining room table and she's like, well, we have to eat. So I'm going to move this here. Right. It could just be something like I left in the kitchen and, my ADHD made me start something else and I walked away from it and just never got back to putting it in its rightful place or whatever the case may be. I come home, there's additional things on my desk, and I'm like, why? Right. And in the moment, like, I feel like I just wanted to move it back and like, this is okay here. Like, it doesn't need to be on my desk. Not everything needs to be on my desk, right? This is how my mind is thinking. And so in my mind, that's like kind of spiteful, right? So, oh, you can move this here, I'm gonna move it back. And then like wait till you notice and it'll be a thing, right? But in that moment, I was able to mildly broach the topic and I asked her, um, I feel like I don't have any other space in here other than like my office area. So I feel like anytime you find something of mine, you just move it there, and whether it belongs in my office or not, like it's just the spot. Like everything it goes. And she was busy, I think, cooking at the time, and then like it's my responsibility to go and be with the kids. I just got home from work, so I kind of just left it at that and walked away. Right, my wife, being who she is, came to me and she's like, "You need to come in the kitchen and we need to talk about this." Right, so we were able to settle it. But what I learned is, for her, my piles give her anxiety. Right,
Mhm.
and it was something I didn't know. Right, so knowing that, number one, made me feel bad about wanting to be petty, but number two, made me feel bad because like I didn't know I was causing anxiety in my wife. And so with that being said, I just need to be better.
Yeah, it's always when you play out the scenario or have someone be able to give you more context to why they did something, that's when
Mhm.
you can be like, oh, I probably shouldn't be petty because there's usually a reason why.
Yeah.
In most strong, healthy relationships, that's the case. Sometimes it's not. And then if your relationship is at an unhealthy place, then there can be a lot of spite kind of going back and forth. Um, yeah, I mean, your thought process kind of walks through just what spite is, right? Because you're like, why is this here? Like, so I'm gonna move it back. Like, that is, it's basically you're just doing it to irritate or annoy. Like, there was no like purpose had you done that besides annoying. You know what I mean?
Right.
Um, so I think that's a, or irritate because she moved it there. Now you're moving it back. Then she's gonna move it there. Then she's gonna move it back. And then, that is like the epitome of spite and pettiness at that point. So once you walk through that, you see that there's not really a reason. Let's just talk about it. And then once you did, glad that she followed back up, because in
Mm,
essence, if that was me, I could have just said my piece and walked away and like forgot about it till the next time, and
yep.
then maybe have moved to action, like I'll put this back and just leave it there. So,
Yeah. Kudos to her because she definitely got us to a resolution on that one. Um, and talking about reasons as well, she also shared with me like the reason I put it there is because I know you always go there. So I figured if you saw it there, you would put it away.
yeah, the funny thing about that is like it's really a thoughtful uh
Mm,
action for her.
right.
She's like, okay, this is his. I don't know when he'll see this again or what happened and why it's here. I know it doesn't go here. So if I need to move it, where will he see it so he can put it in the right place? Not like,
Yeah.
let me put it somewhere and then he can't find it when he needs it. Right. You see
Right.
what I'm saying? So there's so much consideration in there. But I know a lot of times we see this play out in kind of our counseling sessions is, for like, and with like money situations, right? If someone is, they see that either they're spending money on something or they're commenting on what they're spending, it's more like, oh, that bothers them. Okay, I'm gonna do it more. Like I'm gonna spend more on it, or I'm not gonna tell them, or I'm gonna, so that is a deeper, like, when you mess with people's money, like it's it can be real cut, real deep. Um,
Yeah.
so a lot of those things, it can be comparing what people are spending on. If there's a budget, if they keep blowing that budget, um, for me, I have to fight that sometimes because I usually don't spend money. I'm more of the saver, and my wife is more of the spender.
Uh,
So I really have to fight through that based on things that we budget for. Like it's allocated funds, but I could easily reconcile my mind and be like, well, okay, so she spends this much every month on this. So 3 months from now, I should just go buy this. That's the same amount, but different. But we also didn't budget for it. So, like, who is that helping? No one. Um, so that would be that's just something I have to really work through sometimes. And sometimes it's like, oh, I don't even think about it. And it's like, man, I really want this thing. Should I sacrifice something else when I never buy anything anyway? So, I mean, we kind of have the money. I could actually talk my way and wrap this into the budget if I want to.
right.
Um, so it's just those things. And if I was to do that, that would be without even talking to her, would be bad communication and poor financial stewardship. But
Right.
at the same time, I could just justify it. Be like, man, she buys that, so I'm gonna buy this.
Yeah. So this is going to be a little bit pivot, but you brought up the money aspect of it, and I heard Steve Harvey, or I watched a clip of Steve Harvey talking about this, and I wanted your opinion on it. How do you feel about having separate, like, fund money accounts? Right, like so you have your central account where all the money comes into, but then you have budgeted like fund money for each person, and then like it's like basically the guilt-free way of being able to spend your budgeted fund money. Do you think that's okay?
I actually think that that's fantastic. We currently, where our financial goals are, we don't really have that.
Mm,
So I've never experienced it, but it seems like, why not? Like, have a separate account that's specifically yours. You do whatever with it. You're getting this money in. I don't even have to worry about it. We can just reconcile the budget when we talk about it later, if there needs to be a conversation. Like
Right.
if we're that detailed in what we're spending on, then we can say, oh, like I use my fund money for this. Am I spending too much in this thing? But it's fun money, so it kind of is like, how do you
Right.
do that, right? So if the amount is what the amount is, then go for it. So, but when
There.
you say separate, what do you mean separate? I guess let me ask that. Like separate, like it's not a joint account, like it's just that one spouse's account, or it's separate, like so she may have an account that I know about, but I don't ever check it, but I have access to if I wanted to.
So that I'm not sure about. The way he made
Okay.
it sound was, it is a separate account, right? And it might be tied like to the same bank, to the same central account.
Hmm.
But in my mind, it would be more or less like, if I log in, I can see all the accounts and I can see, what's in there or what's not in there, right? Because it would make the most sense to have them all tied to one account. So digitally, we
Yeah,
could
you
just,
just
we allotted this amount, boom, I'll just push it over here. This one, boom, just push it over there, right? But it's not so much like, oh, I want to be able to go in and check on what she's spending on. Like
right.
it's, we already
Yeah,
said that that's whatever you want to do with your money.
yeah, agreed.
So I'm not even so concerned about what it's being spent on. It's just more or less like knowing that we put the money in there that we said was going to go in there and being able to do that easily. And then, just having a separate debit card for that. So you could do whatever it is. You know what I mean? And on that topic, I feel like it's a great way. Let's say there was a larger ticket item that you want to purchase for yourself. Number one,
Hmm.
you could take a couple months and save up for it, right? And then secondly, what I like about this also is where we struggle because we don't practice this right now is gift giving times, right? If we
Right.
have a shared Amazon account or whatever the case may be, you see that, oh, this went to Titleist.com. Right?
Right. Like, oh, getting something for golf. Yes, right. You do the happy dance.
You know what I mean? So I think this would be a real solid way to mitigate that as well.
No, yeah, I definitely agree. And we also struggle with that on the gift giving. Um, yeah, I mean, it had come to the point where like if we do a gift, we have to like move a lump sum and then like have someone else buy it because so that we can't see, which
Yeah.
is a little bit of a pain, but I think that would be a good practice for us too. Yeah, I like that. I've actually thought about it, and we generally teach that, but we haven't got to where we want to, where we're actually like, let's put some money. It's hard for us to reconcile putting away fun money right now, even though it's a healthy thing that we should do. But we just have to work through that, as a unit. But we haven't landed on doing that and or a number. Um, so, but I think in the near future we will. We've been working toward it, but we'll see what
Yeah.
happens.
And I think I kind of feel where you're coming from because for us at least, or I haven't necessarily had this conversation with my wife. So I'll say for me, that money that I want to budget for fun, I shouldn't necessarily be doing that top number yet. Right. So
Hmm.
it's in my mind, it's like all or nothing.
Right.
But what I should do to get into the practice is just make it like $50 per pay period or $100 per
Hmm.
pay period, right? And then like if I truly want something and I'm committed to waiting for it and like saving the money, then whatever it is, 50, $100 at a clip, then at least it's there. And I don't have to worry about it, but I'm also getting the practice of being able to, now that I'm thinking about it, as Dave Ramsey says all the time, Christmas comes at the same time every year. So what if we started practicing by budgeting like from now or the beginning of the year for Christmas, did that math like, all right, so I'm going to start shopping beginning of November. What amount of money do I need? And then just put that money in my fund money account
Hmm.
up to that date.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's super smart. But I
Mhm.
think and then you can also go a step further and be like birthdays, right? Birthdays
Yeah.
don't change. They're the same. You
Right.
could either put it all in like a gift account and be like, and know that this amount of money will go to Christmas, this will be birthdays, whatever. Um, if you wanted to go a little bit deeper, a little bit more. But, you know, sometimes life happens and you just don't plan. And then you're like, what? I need this. And then you are scrambling. But when you plan, you can do better.
Yeah, that's good. So completely changed the conversation. Um, I don't know, but I feel like it was worth talking about. So
Yeah,
I don't so much that we changed it a little bit.
no, I
Um,
agree.
is there, considering we started off talking about spite, is there anything else that you could think of that might serve the audience, help me out in, just kind of being better at, I guess, considering the feelings and or thought process of my wife?
Yeah, I think it's to try to, like from your example, if you can try to recognize it, like put it on your radar that if it's something you do often, like
Mm.
recognize that, and be like, okay, am I doing this? Should I say this? Like really kind of evaluate, just take a 1 second thought, like, do I need to say this right now? And then be like, okay, I do, but why? Is this, am I trying to resolve this or am I just trying to be snarky for no reason? Right.
Right.
So, and realize it can be just the little things too, like as small as moving something back to where you think it should be, or moving, dealing with money situations within your marriage. It's a wide range, but if you can start with the smaller things, and then just have a conversation. I think it's the conversations that allow us to see the reasons behind whatever the annoyance is or whatever the cause for us to want to be spiteful or petty.
Hmm.
Once you realize that as husbands, our wives generally aren't trying to poke the bear unless we just don't communicate and she's trying to get any response that she can.
Right.
Um, then you'll see her thought process, and then you won't be as um, triggered to be petty or spiteful. I think.
That makes a lot of sense. And I was thinking, excuse me, how do, what do I want to say? What I what I do when I'm being spiteful is never on a large scale. Like it's never about like money or like me trying to like cut as deep as I can, right? So I think that's why largely I've been able to like make a pretty decent shift.
Mhm.
I don't want to say quickly, but once I was mindful of it, it became easier, right? And I lost my train of thought, but that's okay. What was I going to say? Hmm.
I'll say that's a good that's a good thing, and that goes right along the lines of spite. It's about being petty. It's ill will, but it's more to annoy or to irritate, not to like crush and bring the hammer down, right? It's more so like, let me do this little thing. But at the same time, you don't want to start doing like death by 1,000 cuts and you're just petty all day, every day. And then there's now this big issue because of your pettiness. So,
Yeah, I appreciate that because it got me back to what I was thinking. Um, I think as men, we want to avoid those uncomfortable spaces, right? Um, but the funny thing is that for me, at least, I will do something like mildly spiteful and it creates an uncomfortable space,
mm,
right? So
yeah.
let's say there's a trigger to become spiteful, right? Whatever that trigger was, rather than just automatically jumping into the uncomfortable space and solving it, having the conversation. I'll do something spiteful that is going to thrust me into an uncomfortable space that's
Right.
even worse, right? That is more than likely going to come up at a time that I don't want it to. 'Cause that's just
That's
been my
true.
like, oh, okay. And all right, so I can give y'all a very good example, and we're coming up on time, so I'm trying to make it quick. Um, let's say I want to go golfing, but I did something spiteful. And as I'm about to walk out the door, my wife's like, "Oh, before you go, let's have a conversation about this." Like, but I've got a tea time.
Right. Not today.
That's how it in my life, you know. Put that out there. But yeah, fellas, have the uncomfortable conversation from the jump. Because also in my experience, what I've found is, and I just mentioned this earlier in the episode, but you will probably learn something about your wife, how the way, the way she thinks, and the reason she actually did something that wasn't necessarily intended to harm you, to spite you, to make you feel some type of way. She may have just needed some relief from your foolishness that she deals with day to day.
Right.
But glad we brought it back around, but that's all I got on that one, man.
Oh, that's good. That was a good conversation. And just a little nugget to help us as we're trying to be better husbands and win in our marriage. So I think that was a good conversation.